Woman Up is a podcast talking to self-identifying women and non-binary artists, creatives, art critics, feminist historians, activists, and more. This series was conceived by Desperate Artwives founder Amy Dignam in collaboration with me, Susan Merrick. Desperate Artwives is a platform established in 2010 for women artists who are also mothers and carers. Amy's work focuses on domestic disorder, unsteady identity, power, and dysfunction. And I'm an artist interested in feminism, language, power, and access. In this platform, we share conversations with women that inspire us and our work, whilst producing a long-form content of resources for other people to access. Hello and welcome to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Artwives. I'm Susan Merrick, and today we're speaking with Leni Dothan. Leni is an Israeli-born artist, architect, and researcher based in London, dealing with the overlooked representations of women, especially mothers, in art history and contemporary culture. Through the prism of a mother to a boy, a foreigner in the West, she creates sculptures, photographs, videos, and installations that suggest new narratives other than the perfect and ideal mother and child relationship. Dothan completed her MFA and PhD at the Slate School of Fine Art, London. Leni also works collaboratively with scientists to raise awareness on eco-political subjects and environmental issues. Dothan presents her work around the world in galleries and museums, and she is represented by MT Art Agency. Hello and welcome, Leni.
Hello, Susan. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Amy and I have been very excited to hear about your work.
Yeah,
I'll hear more about your work. I'd like to get started straight away by talking a bit about your thesis, your PhD thesis titled Breaching the Contract.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about in that your work aims to reposition women and mothers as real rather than ideal. And I wanted to find out what made you start challenging that.
Okay. Yeah. So I always adored Renaissance art. I loved it. I saw those beautiful masterpieces. My great-grandparents came from Vienna to Israel, and they brought with them some art books. And as a child, I opened up the books of the great masters, and I was totally in love. However, when I became a mother, I looked again at the art books. I think also because I was the first to have a child among my friends. I was the first to have a child among my family. I'm the oldest daughter. My cousins are all younger than me. So I was a bit clueless about how to be a mother. So naturally, as an artist, I looked at the art books and looked for some models. And Mary after Mary, they're all perfect and ideal. And I just couldn't find myself relating to this experience that I was experiencing, which was overwhelming, full of mixed emotions. And also the mothers around me, my mother, and I have another, like my father's partner is also like another mother to me. And my grandmothers, they're all forgotten about the complexity of being a young mother. So this dissonance made me think that something is not quite right,
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is how it all began when I held my baby, and I couldn't be that ideal mother anymore. And I couldn't find other representations in contemporary art, because when I looked on contemporary artwork, I think contemporary artists naturally fall in love in the ideal moment. And instead of challenging them, they recreate the beauty. And the beauty is so powerful that somehow it sabotages the content, you know. It makes like a camouflage, like, what do I see here? Oh, this is beautiful, but what is actually that is going on in those beautiful images? What is the message to me? I must sit, be passive, ideal, beautiful. What if I'm not? You know, I'm after birth. I nearly died in that birth. It was a traumatic one. I didn't look so amazing. I didn't feel very amazing. It was even hard for me to look at the world in, I say, soft eyes. It's a term that a friend of mine coined, and I think it's beautiful and also very related to motherhood and what is a mother and the ideal mother. Couldn't be that one.
I think that will resonate with a lot of people, Leni, a lot. So you talk about how the methodology you use is often looking at iconology, iconography. I'm going to have to read this to say it right.
Iconology, iconography, iconophilia, and
iconoclasm.
Iconoclasm,
yeah.
Exactly. And the one that I continue with my own term with iconology.
Yeah, could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So if iconology is telling us about the context of where the icons were made, about the culture that the artist was surrounded by, from within the time, from within the history. Iconology looks at icons from the present, and it's a subjective reading. It's not the art historical reading that strives to understand the artist's state of mind, the social political connection. It's how I perceive it personally, my subjective point of view on icons of the past. Each one will bring their own baggages to that reading. So the reading is allowing for multiple readings. It doesn't strive to be correct or right or reliable to the artist, but it will be reliable to the reader. Yeah. So from the now point of view and my personal point of view, I was reading, for example, the Binding of Isaac, the moment where Abraham is being asked to sacrifice his beloved child, Isaac. And he goes to the mountain with Isaac, and it's, of course, represented by beautiful paintings, for example, of Caravaggio or Rembrandt. But when I look at it from the iconology point of view, I ask where I am. Where is the mother? What is this story? Would anyone accept this story today? Would any mother accept this story today? And I go in museums and, everyone nod. Oh, yes, of course, Abraham and Isaac, the Binding of Isaac. However, when I stand in front of my child, trying to understand the narrative from the mother's point of view, I stand with a knife. Maybe I'll tell a little bit about how it was created, because it's such a controversial work. It faces every time the debate So it's a small loop. It's a 23-second loop video. I placed the camera in our bedroom, and I hid a knife within the sheet that are on the floor. And my son, who was 2.5 years old, already knew how to operate the camera, and he pressed roll, but he didn't know I'm going to take the knife out of the sheet. And he was in this psychological stage that he always wanted what I held in my hand. And even so, if it was dangerous. Yeah, so I raised the knife, and he naturally was running, drawn into the knife, wanting it. So my binding of Isaac was about the dialogue between of the mother and child. He wanted the knife, and I took the knife away from him. But at the same time, I had the mythological story, the question of the sacrifice, the question of belief, like blind belief. Yeah, also. So it's a battle between the two narratives. And yeah, so the iconology point of view allowed me to challenge the classical iconography.
It's a very powerful term to fit in with feminist theory and feminist art theory, isn't it? I think it works very well because it allows for that.
It allowed us to have a voice.
Yeah, exactly. We get to have that perspective as women and as mothers over those pieces of art. Yeah, fantastic.
I'm happy that you picked it up from my page. First of all, I'm happy that you read it. It's wonderful that someone even reads.
Well, I think everybody should. The PhD thesis, Breaching the Contract by Leni Dothan, is available on the UCL website. Yeah. If you just Google it, it will come up straight away. That's what I did. Yeah. And we can maybe put a link to it in the show notes if you'd like as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, yeah. Please.
Do you think when you talk about images, paintings, photographs, all images as visual contracts, which it's quite a new term for me actually. I found incredibly interesting, and it probably shouldn't be a new term as a sociologist as well as artist, but it kind of was, yeah. And I kind of clung to that quite quickly within the work. So the idea of visual contract, that what we see every day from old paintings to the modern day mainstream media, is the way that we are taught kind of our social norms, our rules, our behaviors. Do you think that social media plays a part in breaking or making those visual contracts?
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Yes. Definitely. Sometimes, as you said, they're breaking the contracts, and sometimes breaching the contract, and sometimes they are recreating or re-signing. I call it re-signing the contract. You mentioned the NIPO when you previously sent me your questions or thoughts.
On Instagram, yeah, banning the NIPO on Instagram.
Yeah, something that I'm often finding myself banned from Instagram because of that. I forget, I just forget. I naturally post something, and a second after I'm out of the game. Yeah. So I think it's an iconoclast act to be fearful from images, and I think iconoclasm from its inception is something that based on fear, the fear of image, fear of the impact of image, knowing how impactful images are. It's not a random concept to be fearful from images. they are a very powerful tool to pass on a message, an idea. But the question is always political. Why to ban one thing and not another? Yeah. Why the nipple? Why female nipple are banned, but males are not? I have a work called Jesus of the Genes, when we have nipples of a child, of a mother, and a father. Why wouldn't we ban the nipples of a child and claim for pedophilia? Why wouldn't we ban, And then I find myself needing to censor only my nipples, even though, I'm not huge, I don't have huge breasts. It's almost like a male breast, And the question is political, the question behind it, why to ban this? Why not to ban? I have another work, A Sleeping Madonna, when I'm breastfeeding. Why is it okay to breastfeeding in public? Not every single breastfeeding in public wouldn't be banned. But this one, The Sleeping Madonna, which you see a young woman breastfeeding her child with a red dress, very much resonated with Renaissance classical works. This work was never banned on social media. Why? Because it resonates too much with classical iconography. It resonate too much with patriarchy imagery, that the algorithm get confused about the message, so.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of your other pieces of work as well? Because your work is incredibly powerful. Examples like Birth and Death, which I saw in person, which is really exciting because I was at the M-Word exhibition by Desperate Artwives. And also, which was the other work that I saw? I also saw your work, which was the work that you had at the Procreate Oxytocin conference.
Yes, the work, the Mother-Child Machine, number 7. Yeah. It's a wooden structure. I often build structures in one-to-one scale to fit me and my son, and later to perform with the audience I invite in to perform in front of the camera. So in Oxytocin, I built a structure for mother and child. It's a little bit Egyptian set, I say, ancient Egyptian set, or a confessional, how do you call them? Not the cloth. How do you call
I know
confessional
what you...
room?
Yeah, yeah.
Confessional room.
I think it is just called the confessional.
In the church?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And however you can see each other, it's a structure for mother and child, and there is a step that was created exactly for the measures of my son and myself, that we will be eye leveled. So the conversation will be in the same eye level. It's not the parent is looking up or the child is, down. And in all my work, you can see the change of side. My son is growing since he was a baby, and now he's 11. So the sizes of the sculptures are also changing with time. And in that work, instead of iconography, which is almost like a selfie, showing the moment, the ideal moment, and also when people are Mary and Jesus or the saint will always be frontal to the viewer.
Yeah.
in this work, following my son's request not to be seen. He didn't want his, he just learned in school that it's really bad to be seen in social media. The children shouldn't be seen in social media. And he said, Mom, it's horrible. I don't want to be seen, there are pedophiles out there. And I had to agree, So that request created a huge challenge, and at the same time forced us to create a new iconography, which is not frontal. I didn't see classical iconography, which is not frontal, because the whole story should be, straight in your face. And this enabled us to have a dialogue within the iconography of a mother and child, which is something that is completely absent from the narrative. So we were sitting there, and he was in that mode of playing mode. Yeah, a lot of the time he's playing, and he was shooting me, out of play, and it's a play. I was shooting him as well. But when you see it in a film, it's like a stop motion, and you see a mother pointing a gun towards her child, is very aggressive. It's something that normally...
Yeah, when you say gun, just to be clear for listeners, you're talking about using your hands, aren't you, in the shape of a gun, and the image captures both of you at the same time, kind of directing your hands as if shooting one another.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it's hard to describe.
It is, yeah.
The works
audio,
on podcasts, yes.
Well, people can look at them as well afterwards. So it's a strong work, and. So when I was at the M Word exhibition with
Which exhibition?
Amy Dignam, the M Word exhibition with Amy Dignam and Desperate Artwives, I saw Birth and Death, your sculptural piece, which is how would you describe it? A double coffin, yeah, twin.
It's called double.
A double coffin. Okay, yeah.
Just double.
Could you talk about that work, please?
Yes. So, as you said, it's a sculpture made out of reclaimed wood, in the sizes, again, of me and my son. And I made it here in London, not just maybe 1.5 years after being here in London, coming from Israel. And I think the question of the sacrifice and the pietà and binding of Isaac, this triangle of subject themes, were and still are occupying my thoughts. Coming from Israel, where I have to send my son to the army at the age of 18. So the minute I knew I'm carrying a boy, the clock started ticking to that moment of potential sacrifice. It doesn't, touch wood, I don't know what to say. But there is always the potential moment of sacrifice. And the pietà, the moment that Mary is holding Jesus after he was taken down from the cross, is maybe the complementary subject of binding of Isaac. If Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son, and it's the father's sacrifice, the pietà in Christian art is where the mother is being asked to sacrifice her son. And looking at the pietà as a visual contract, if you mentioned it earlier, a contract that was maybe mostly defined with Michelangelo's Pietà. The first Pietà he made, not the one he did when he was the unfinished Pietà, where he really refined the rules or the clause, how do you say, in the contract?
The clauses.
Clauses, yes, sorry. The clauses in the contract. Yeah, and what are the clauses? Yes, she must be beautiful, she's young, she shouldn't cry, she shouldn't look at her son's face. She's like a podium to his death. She submissively accepts his death. So these are the clauses of the contract. And I look at them and I just cannot accept them, you know. I cannot accept them even as a thought, as a potential thought. And I'm thinking, all right, how do I negotiate this with myself, you know? I don't want to sit there. I won't sit there. So I had to create my own Pietà, where if touch wood something happen, I'm not sitting there. I wouldn't sit there. I will probably die with my son in one work, or running, stand up, run, try to attempt to save him. Either or, but to sit there, as I've been taught by the great master serving the church and patriarchy, it's not my Pietà. My Pietà will be different. And this double coffin is, having this dialogue with the classical Pietà.
It was really powerful in your writing when you were talking about time and time again when people use that in, for example, when somebody's died in a conflict somewhere, and there will often be images of mothers holding images of their sons, and it was really striking, to compare that and to realize that it's, as you say, that contract is being re-signed all of the time by what we see in the media when somebody loses their child, how they are supposed to act, what they're supposed to represent as a mother. A very striking revelation to me, I think.
I think it's interesting to see it also going through the media and what happened socially, within time. So at first, Michelangelo, yes, he created the ideal Pietà, he wrote the contract. Then in Victorian time, where mothers were constantly losing their children because of diseases, lack of sanitary and medicine, and they were placing themselves as Marys in front of the camera, or maybe the photographers, who were mainly men, placing them in front of the camera to sit like Marys with the bodies of the dead children. And, and that time, still there was, death was part of life. It wasn't this, the ask for heterotopia, like the death was going to the hospitals and taken away from people. People died, they were kept at home until the funeral, until they were buried or burnt, or I don't know what, and then later, as you mentioned, the photojournalism, where mothers are no longer holding the bodies of the children because society no longer contains death. Mothers will not hold the traces of their dead bodies from the battlefield. Mothers will not hold the bodies of the children if, I don't know, they died. No, the hospital will take it and the funeral places will hold the body. This whole separation between life and death has been taken by the establishment, you can say. Yeah. And then the mothers will hold a representation of their child, a photograph, rather than the real body.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still maintain the concept.
Yeah. It's
no matter what, the concept will be maintained. Yeah.
Yeah. And the framing of it, the image, when you see the images of these mothers with the images of their children, it's still almost the same composition throughout time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned within that, talking about, if you're talking about Renaissance art, you're talking about religious art and churches. So I know that you have used churches sometimes for the installation of some of your pieces. So I'm interested to know how those churches or the people that use the churches responded to your work. How was that?
I think I'm very lucky to have my research here in the UK, because the Church of England is very questioning church, self-questioning. So unlike Catholic churches, where my works are completely like no one will show them. Absolutely, it's now we tried. Yeah, it's not part of the game. There is one narrative, and the narrative is the one that is on the stained glasses in the church, and there is no opportunity to question that narrative whatsoever. However, here, all the churches are super questioning and welcoming a debate. So I'm very lucky to have my research here. I didn't know it when I began my research, I didn't know the differences. For me, Christianity, I'm Jewish. So of course, coming from Israel, we hold all the faiths, and there is a daily friction between Christian, Muslim, Jewish faiths. But for me, Christianity was one. I didn't know. All churches were the same. I know, of course, there were different type of architecture, different type of streams, but I didn't understand how deep the fact would be on my own personal research, where I've been allowed again and again and again to question and to raise another, to create another work, to have audience coming in, having this dissonance between what they see, the narrative they see on the walls, and at the same time to see something that reflects differently. It's like a broken glass, something that reflects something completely different. And it was just terrific.
Wow, that's really great. I'm really glad that that's the response you got. It's it's the perfect setting for many of your pieces, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's also influenced, for example, the Jewish Museum, that would so many things that would be never presented in Israel, including my work. Yeah, the first time ever that my work with the knife, the work mine, was presented in Israel. It was not presented until today. But here, the first place who took it was the Jewish Museum, which I think this debatable culture brought in this spirit that, okay, Judaism says this, but we should open it up for a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I really like this fluidity that it brings in different cultures, different faiths as well.
Yeah. That's really powerful.
And it comes to institutions, which are the most difficult to negotiate new ideas.
Yeah. So on that note, talking about, I suppose, acceptance of work, or at least acceptance of the debates that your work raises, how do you feel as an artist who is working with her child and who is openly a mother artist, when we sometimes feel we have to hide that? How was that within institutions? So within the institutions that you've worked in, not church-based, but academic institutions?
You're asking about what it's like to be a mother in this world?
How is
in this world of art?
I am. How are you? Because I know how it can be generically, but how has your experience been as a mother artist, and in terms of your work and your own practice?
Yeah. At the beginning, I was really lonely. I came to the Slate, I was 33 or 4, 3. And, I began first my master's. I did my master's and then my PhD. And I was one of the older people in the how do you say, program?
Yeah.
And definitely one of the few to have children. Those who had children were more male artists that had a child and someone to take care of the child at home. I came to London by myself, just me and my son. So there was no one at home to take care of my son while I was, studying, working. And of course, the Slate is amazing. I really recommend this school to anyone who think about going for further education. But there are built-in things in the program. For example, lectures in the evening that I could never attend. Things that are just not accessible for mothers, for parents, and especially single parents. I think there was a lot of effort to understand the situation. However, most of my tutors are childless. So there was a huge gap of understanding what is at home. And my son wasn't just at home, he grew up at the Slate. I was there for 6 years. So he really grew up. He was the Slate baby since he was 3. He was running in the corridors, in the studios, and everyone knew him in the office. and everywhere he came with me to lectures of, Griselda Pollock, for example. All kind of things that I just couldn't miss. What can I do? He has to come with me. So for him, or for people from the outside, it looked like I'm torturing my child, 6, 7 p.m. sitting in a lecture room, lecture hall, listening to a lecture, or going to private views. I could only go with him. Well, fuck it, what can I say? This is what the best I could do, and the best I still can do. And if someone cannot accept it, then move on.
It's the only way that parents, that mothers can find more acceptance in the art world and in the art education world, is by being present and by talking about the issues and showing the issues and showing what you need. And I think that's the same across so many workplaces, isn't it? It's like, unless you talk about it and see the issues, then you can't make change. It's got to be, you have to talk about it and show it.
Yeah, I think as the years passed and I realized that really it's the core of my work. I didn't know I'm going to do such a long-term body of work discussing the mother-child relationship and really trying to fill this gap between birth and death that been represented in art history. Only those two poles of birth with the Madonna and child, and then later the Pietà, and there is nothing in between that describes the relationship of the mother and child. What is that between the birth and the death? That it's a whole life that is just undiscussed, unrepresented, transparent. I didn't know this is what I'm going to do. It was just, happening as I realized it just occupies my whole world in the art and my whole world in my life. And it just have to become one, because I just couldn't do other things,
Yeah. I want to see if I've got any other questions, or if I just want to hear a bit more about some of your work.
If you don't mind to take your hands.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, this is okay.
I'm an interpreter as well. I shouldn't do that.
Interpreter from which to what?
Sign language.
No.
Yeah.
You're joking.
No.
I thought you're interpreting languages written.
No.
What?
Sign language.
I'm shocked. Let's talk about this.
We'll save that for after the recording.
No, there is this work that is really important for me. The work young woman with hearing aid.
Yeah.
That it's also like a classical setting, but from the back. And it's another place where I felt that I'm not perfect and I'm not as what I'm supposed to be and what is expected from me to be, this perfect with this big hearing aid behind my ears. And every time someone takes a photograph of me from a certain angle that the hearing aids are visible, who is this woman? What does she have on her ears? And it's something that I really want to bring up and to show. Actually, this is beautiful. This is part of the imperfect of the perfect of the imperfect.
There was a great quote again that I've taken from your conclusion in the thesis. I'm surprised. Maybe you read this. I don't know. Where you said that the realization of mother artists still being the underdogs of the dominant art world, which still has preconceptions about the abilities of women and especially mothers to be great artists, was magnified through your work, through your practice. And it was almost like finding, this was when you were talking about finding other mother artists and other groups of mother artists. And that you said it was like finding a group of witches in the Middle Ages living in the shadow of patriarchal law and establishment. And I found that very powerful. And I just want to end with the question that, do you think that you've responded to that feeling in your work, or do you have a desire to if you haven't?
So, funnily enough, and not fun, and sadly, I met my sister's artist, my group of witches, at the very end of my PhD. Through the PhD, I was super lonely, super, super lonely. And all of a sudden, I got an email from Wales for a conference about motherhood. And they wrote me, "Oh, our lost sister, where have you been all the time?" I didn't know, I didn't know there are other artists, mothers, and a whole new world was open up for me. And from that moment, I really felt like I'm one of a group of women, of mothers who took this as a mission in the world. And I'm less lonely, more happy, and still I didn't process it in the PhD because it came really so late in the research. But I'm very, very grateful to be in the UK, knowing that there is a fantastic group of mother artists with the Mother Suckers art in Wales, and the Desperate Artwives, Procreate Project, of course, Birthright Collection, so many, not so many, but at least a few really good platform to meet up, to discuss, and to strive and push to be in the mainstream. Because if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I want to put your work in the cafe or something," I'm like, "No, I want to be in the fucking museum," No, this should be in the museum, because enough. We were too many years in the periphery of the art world, and now it's time for the mainstream for all of us. Yeah.
And that is the perfect way to end the podcast, I think,
Cheers.
Leni. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing
thank you,
to talk
Susan.
to you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.
You've been listening to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Artwives in collaboration with me, Susan Merrick, and in association with the Women's Arts Library at Goldsmiths.